Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. Good afternoon. And welcome to our conversation on the changing face of PR. It's so wonderful to see all of you. I see some students. Yay, students. Kelly, students. And and I also see some mid-level practitioners I know, and also some master practitioners. You'll hear us say master practitioners sometimes. Those are the 20-plus year veterans. So it's so wonderful to see all of you, and we're in for an exciting time here today. I love a good conversation. I love hallway conversations. I love conversations that are thought-provoking, and we have that for you today. I want to say hello to our friends in Charleston and in Greenville, because we are simulcasting right now live to them. So hello everyone in the Low Country and Upstate. We're glad you're with us today. Be sure to pay attention to this hashtag, SCPRSA 2016. That's going to be our key hashtag for today. So we're going to have this conversation both online and offline, and it's exciting to know that we're going to have a conversation that we can check out later when we all leave the room. I love the sharing sessions so much with just all the in-depth conversations we can have that move you to action. So I want you to leave here today feeling empowered. I want you to leave feeling that you have work to do, that you can maybe add a new twist on your current work. I want you to feel that today is giving you something to think about when you leave the room and take with you. So I encourage all of you to, if you have questions, just kind of raise your hand. We are, with Bobby's help, Bobby Ratu is with Gray Digital Group, and he's running the show today with all of our communication and technical side of things. So if you have a question, just raise your hand. Bobby's going to help navigate everything we're doing on Twitter as well. So we're going to integrate some Twitter questions in. But if you have a question in the room, we're going to go to you first. So just raise your hand and tell us your question, and I'll just repose that question for you.
People hear what to do with that hashtag. Tweet question.
Yes, if you're in Charleston or Greenville, be sure to use this hashtag, tweet your question, and Bobby will be monitoring that hashtag, and we'll make sure we talk about your question while we're here. So we have some PR leaders with us today who represent diverse backgrounds, diverse skill sets, and I'm very excited they're going to help us lead the conversation today. Patti Embry-Tautenhan is a seasoned communications professional with nearly 30 years experience in healthcare communications, strategic messaging, media relations, reputation issues management, speech writing, and executive visibility. Patti sets the strategic direction and messaging for media relations for BlueCross and its subsidiaries, and provides strategic communications counsel to senior leadership. So welcome, Patti.
Thanks you. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks to everyone for coming.
Yes. Adrienne Fairwell joined the South Carolina Department of Commerce as Marketing and Communications Director last year. She directs the organization's Strategic Communications Initiative, and she's also spokesperson for the department. She brings 15 years of experience in developing long-range strategic and communications plans to create both awareness of agency topics and generate public support. Welcome, Adrienne.
Thank you.
Robyn Rudish-Laning is Communications Coordinator for the South Carolina Council on Competitiveness. Prior to moving to South Carolina, she lived and worked in Pittsburgh, where she was in retail marketing and PR. Robyn is a new pro, so she is an active member of the executive committee of PRSA's new professionals section. So welcome, Robyn.
Thank you.
So one of the things that I often have conversations with my colleagues on is they feel they are bogged down and become a little bit robotic in their work because they focus so much on tactics. So I don't know how this has happened over the years, but many people think PR people are the AV people, that they're supposed to do the PowerPoint slides, or that they work on the newsletter, that kind of thing. But We are absolutely strategists. We need to, whether you're a new pro or you're a seasoned master practitioner, we need to always be thinking about strategy. How can we move ourselves from tactical to strategic in our work? Because it only proves our value and it reaffirms our commitment to what we do as PR professionals. So, Patti, what do you think about how someone who feels that they're kind of in a holding pattern in their work, they want to be a strategist, but they just simply feel that they can't get their head above water because of all the tactical day-to-day. How do you feel they can move the needle on that?
Well, I think that that's a realistic challenge for PR people because particularly if you're a PR person in a nonprofit, you may have limited resources, and so that you are juggling a lot of balls. We were talking about this a little earlier. I also think that as a profession, the people who are in PR, we're very good at implementation, and there's a comfort in the familiar, in getting the tactics done and getting it done correctly. I think what you said about sort of thinking of yourself as a strategist, that's important. You have to really sort of assume that responsibility, but you also, if you're early in your career, you have to understand that it's not a good idea just to throw ideas out there to be throwing ideas out there. That you're going to have a lot of responsibilities. Tactics, implementing the tactics will be one part of it, but you really do need to be thinking about the objective, and you need to be thinking about the context, and you may not have all the information available to you, and you need to be aware of that also. So what I advise people is to think of the objective and then work backwards. Don't be offering up advice or strategy just to be saying something. Make sure that what you offer has value, and frankly, you will earn the opportunity to be strategic. The other piece of it is that you may be in a situation where, frankly, your leadership isn't looking for you to be strategic. There are many different opportunities, and you can learn from the good and the bad. But I think the self-awareness, thinking about what you have to offer, the listening skills, the critical thinking skills that you have to offer, and understanding the context. And I have the good fortune of having really good people on my team, most of whom are here today supporting me, and they're probably sick to wretched death of hearing me talk about context, but that is something I say on a daily basis.
Any questions?
I've got one. Just to hone in on that, because I think that's very insightful. A lot of my work, I've been in PR for 20 years in different varying capacities. But oftentimes, I'm very big on objective-based communication. In your experience, how do you pivot when the client may not know their objective, right? They're so focused on tactics, right? They just want the splash, they just want the pathway, they want the creative content, and when you talk to them about objectives, they kind of look at you like, what?
So Melissa's question has everything to do with how do you move someone who isn't focused on objectives. They simply do not understand the meaning, the function behind them, and how critical they are to our work. They just want to focus on tactics to give you just a running list of to-do items. So how do you change that mindset, Patti?
You know what, I understand the challenge that you're talking about behind that, and I go back to your critical thinking skills, and you have to, let me scoot over here. You have to ask the questions, and maybe you don't use the language if they're not responding to that language. You ask them what their goal is. What do they hope to achieve? What does success look like to them? At the end of the day, how do they want to feel, and what do they want to accomplish? So it's, you know, there's no one universal rule to this, but I do think that it's in asking the questions, and if they're being dismissive, well, then you come back and you ask them again. You ask them another time, because it's your responsibility as a consultant. And I really think that all of us as PR people are consultants. We that's where we add value, is in helping people think about what their objectives are, whether you call them an objective or not. Does that answer your question?
Oh, no, I think that's fantastic. Just keep pivoting through with a variety of questions.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of them have never considered the purpose that they want to accomplish.
That's right. And that's where, again, where you really do add value.
Thank you, Melissa.
Sure.
So one of the things that we need to think about all the time as PR practitioners is how important being ethically minded is, and also understanding the difference between brand and reputation. So, Adrienne, what are your thoughts on how we as communicators can navigate the ethical space of our work, and also how do we distinguish between brand and reputation? Because they go hand in hand, yet they're different.
That's a great question. I think the first part to your question is ethics. As PR practitioners, there are so many resources out there that a lot of us don't even know about. But if you go to PRSA.org, got to give them a shout out, there are so many resources that are available to us. The Board of Ethical Standards and Performance, they are a part of the Public Relations Society of America. We call them BEPS, B-E-P-S. And there are actually individuals who practice, who do what we do every day, who can act as sounding boards. They take up issues on behalf of the public relations profession to talk about ethics. In fact, if you were to ever go for your accreditation, a lot of what is covered under that is ethics and how you navigate the space of public relations as it relates to being ethical. Oftentimes, I find that as PR practitioners, we don't even realize what's ethical and what's not ethical, and that's where those sounding boards come into play. Where you can pick up the phone or send an email, or contact me as the ethics officer for SCPRSA to kind of talk through some of those issues. That plays a large role when it comes to brand and brand management, because a brand is one thing, but a reputation is something completely different. A brand is, in my mind, and you all tell me if you agree or disagree, a brand is Coca-Cola, Nike, Moe's even. How do you feel when you talk about those things? When you go to Moe's, how does it make you feel? Or when you go grab a Coke, what is the first thing that comes to mind? But a reputation is how people think of you. How people think of you, how organizations think of you as an entity or even as a person. What a lot of us forget as PR practitioners is that we have personal reputation. So we have a personal brand. And a lot of times we find ourselves in situations where we've been asked to do things by members of the C-suite that if it hits you in the gut and it makes you stop and think for a moment, then that's a sign that actually maybe I need to pick up the phone, or maybe I need to shoot an email to somebody to say, this might not be too kosher, let me get some ideas and some thoughts. Or even going back to pivoting, that's a way to then say, that's a great idea, but have you thought about doing it X, Y, and Z way? One of the things that quickly comes to mind is an advertorial. We often talk about in public relations and marketing and communications, posting advertorials, and there have been times when you are working for an agency or an entity that all they care about are the clips. They just want to see that they've gotten impressions on whatever. And so sometimes as the PR or communicator or marketer that's responsible for that particular job duty, you then find yourself, okay, should I work with newspapers or a magazine to publish an advertorial, and does that count as a clip? So things like that are what we do every day in our jobs from day to day, but it's also a situation where you have to think, is that ethical? And am I representing something that's truly not there? So,
Any thoughts about ethics, brand, reputation?
I would just add one great resource that the Board of Ethics and Professional Standards makes available are these ethical standards advisories, which you can find on the PRSA website under the ethics section. And what the Board of Ethics and Professional Standards does is they look at different issues affecting the profession. Native advertising was the most recent one that they developed, but sometimes if you're just, like, I'm not really sure how to handle this situation, or is there some advisory about this? I think there are at least 20 or so ESAs up there, which kind of give you some guidance from that board, and usually they have been developed after about a year's worth of intense study and research and discussion. So
in
great
fact,
resources.
George Johnson just posted one back here in November about that very thing. George Johnson is one of our own here in South Carolina, so very good resources.
Kelly Davis mentioned the Board of Ethical Standard and Behaviors, and that's something that is a resource at PRSA.org, just letting our friends in Charleston and Greenville know what you mentioned, Kelly. I was so enlightened when Robyn called me a few months ago, and she was making plans to move to South Carolina. She was in Pittsburgh, and she was trying to tackle a big to-do list for her move, and one of the first things that she wanted to do, it was at the very top of her list, was make sure she connected to her local PRSA chapter. She had been a member of the chapter where she was, and I love the fact that that was at the top of your list and it meant that much to you. You valued it that much. So not only did we connect by phone and talk about how to transfer that membership, but we also talked about how you could get involved in our chapter. You have insight as a new pro. You're coming right out of the gate as someone who is a new professional in Columbia. So what are your thoughts on how you think you can shape the future of PR? Because you are part of that generation. We're paving the way for you, but you're going to be critical to the future.
I think one of the biggest things, and as new professionals, we kind of overlook it because maybe we don't know anything or we think we don't know anything. Get involved. When I joined the Pittsburgh chapter, I was a member for maybe a month before they put me on their executive board, which was like a huge step. And I ran their blog and just getting involved, getting to know other people. And I ended up down here getting to know those people. I learned so much. I was in a job, I loved my job, but I wasn't learning anymore. And I think that's the biggest thing as a new professional. It's a struggle when you're somewhere and you love it, but it's not doing anything for you anymore to know when to move on and when to look for bigger things. I think that's how we're gonna keep the profession moving forward, is not just staying in one place and not just sticking to ideas that maybe they're tried and true, but they're not doing the same things they were. Looking for those new ideas and constantly talking with other people and bouncing ideas off of each other, like what we're doing here, what some of us do on, a regular basis, talking back and forth with other members. Just kind of keep looking for those new ideas and don't be afraid to speak up, even if you feel like you don't have enough experience to maybe add anything to the conversation. Just keep on speaking up and getting involved.
So we have a lot of students in the room with us, and we're so glad you're here. So any questions from our students for Robyn, who's a new pro? Well, one of the things that I love is working with the younger generation. We have a lot of young people on our team at Palmetto Health Foundation. And I look at it as an opportunity always to lift them up as leaders. We're all leaders. It doesn't matter what your skill set is necessarily or the number of years of experience you have. We're all leaders. So I always find it to be beneficial to connect with the young crowd because there is this reverse mentorship thing that happens. The young crowd doesn't always need to look to the older crowd for expert advice and helping them how to figure out how to navigate a certain situation. It can happen the other way too. So that reverse mentorship piece happens, and it happens when you least expect it sometimes, and sometimes you put yourself in the space of the younger crowd. So Patti, what are some thoughts on how you've done that and how you have learned new things working with CJ and Ryle? They're here with us today.
Yes.
Tell us a few
Well,
little
perhaps-
golden nuggets you've gotten out of it.
Well, perhaps they should tell you.
They're up next.
They're up next. Well, you know, I want to take a step back and say that, and maybe this is a little more expansive, and it's more about one's approach to life and their profession as part of that life, is that I think that it's so important to remain curious and to keep an open mind, because frankly, I can learn something from every single one of you in this room. It doesn't matter what your professional experience is. I may learn something that's not related to public relations, but nevertheless, I may get this wonderful nugget of information. So I will also share with you that I continue to look for role models. You know, that is something that never ends for me. I look at professional women or women I admire across the board, whether I know them or not, whether they're famous or I get the good fortune to cross paths with them. I can tell you that I sat down with Kelly and walked away so energized from that conversation because she was so generous. So I think that it's more about the spirit with which you approach things. It's maintaining that kind of what I like to think of, and maybe, if you have an openness of heart, maybe on every day it's not as open as you want it to be, but that's what you strive for, and this curiosity. But I will tell you, just as a matter of example, CJ and Ryle do such a terrific job in day-to-day and helping develop strategy for social media for BlueCross. They've done a terrific job. It's something we're really proud of, but it's a daily thing that we work at, and they're native to social media. I came out of a very structured media relations experience, so they've absolutely expanded my horizons. I'm also learning new terminology, and I believe that CJ would also admit that I have shared with her. She now knows about Led Zeppelin. Okay, so it goes both ways. It goes both ways. So we were having one of our weekly team meetings, and CJ was talking about something being on fleek. Oh my God. What? So anyway, yeah. So I was feeling really kind of hip,
Yep.
After that meeting was over. I thought, well, okay.
She's used it since.
I have. I don't know. I have used it. Thank you. So that's an example.
So Patti, are there times when your team, especially on the social media side of communications, when they come to you with an idea where you don't think it fits into the overall communications plan you have for the organization, and you have to let them down gently? Or maybe put it on the shelf and wait.
Well, you know what?
To revisit it.
I will tell you that they have tremendous judgment, and they understand our corporate culture. We're a very conservative company. We also, our approach to social media has been very strategic and deliberate, and it is the conversation. It is not the hard sell. So we are very mindful that everything we do has to feel authentic to our brand. So I really haven't had that experience with them. I have had experience with other areas within the company who want to perhaps put something on social media that's, that's not the right channel, or what they went out there, it's not appropriate for various reasons. So I feel wonderfully protective of the brand, and I am pretty clear about when something doesn't feel authentic to the brand, and so therefore it's not going to go on social media.
But I think that goes back to tactical and strategy, the initial question
That's
for the
right,
conversation.
that's right.
I think if you know the company's objective and or goals, then you're able to point them back to, here are the strategies that we're using to meet
Right.
these particular goals. And then when you do have those entities within the organization, you're able to say, well, that's a great idea, but what about, let's try this. This
Redirect
idea
them, yeah.
actually meets the objective of this over here. And so I think that makes those types of conversations easier.
True.
Because then you've got an overarching strategy to point them back to.
Bobby, do we have any tweet questions?
Not yet.
Just checking, okay. So, Adrienne, you have 15 years of experience as a strategist, a trusted advisor for your organizations you've worked with. So, I want to know, and we want to know what your thoughts are on the importance of authenticity and trust, building trust, establishing those relationships that are wrapped in authenticity and trust.
I think honesty is the first response that I'd have to that, and what we do every day is relationship building. So you have to build a rapport with whomever it is that you're working for or working with. I had the good fortune of working for Reba, who's full disclosure here now, a very good friend of mine, but also a mentor. In that you have to establish a good relationship, and I think that's built on honesty. That's also built on skill set and having that boss, that director, that manager to feel confident in the skills that you bring to the table. What's your value add? And as a result of that, I think that's where the authenticity comes through, and also keeping he or she, out of situations where you're able to have those tough conversations, but do it in a respectful / courtesy, in a manner in which I see this happening if you do X, Y, and Z, but here's what I'd offer as a resolution to that. So not going in with, here's all the bad things you shouldn't be doing, rather come with positive things to the table. But I still think it goes back to being honest and establishing a relationship of trust, but having the skill set to which that they are comfortable enough with you, knowing that you'll be able to do your job and do it well.
Mm-hmm. Anybody have any thoughts?
I would just add, what you just said leads to having a personal brand and a personal reputation that you're upholding for the good of public relations, and then for the good of the practitioner working in various fields.
Absolutely.
So comment we had in the room here in Columbia is tied to the importance of your personal brand, understanding what that means. And did you all have any thoughts on how to uphold and maintain your personal brand as a communicator?
I think being ethical, highly ethical. It goes back to, again, practicing and with the highest level of ethics that you possibly can. And sometimes being willing to step out if you have given advice and counsel that you know is the right advice and counsel, being willing to step out and noticing that, hey, this company, this organization, this individual, this client refuses to listen, and I believe that this is the way to go. And if you feel so strongly about that, being able to step out on the highest level of ethics and being able to go to bed at night, that to me, that's the bottom line. That is your personal brand.
I think for people like new pros that are starting out, like you don't necessarily have a personal brand, so you're working on building it. And one of the most important things when you're working on building that is you have to know yourself. You have to know your skills, and you have to know what you're good at. And that doesn't have to be strictly within PR confines. It doesn't have to be I'm good at social media or I'm good at this and that, but things that you enjoy doing, because you're going to continue to go through your career, and if you're not staying true to yourself, like just back to what Adrienne said, if you're not being ethical and true to yourself and sticking to things that you're interested in doing and things that you're good at and can continue to grow with, you're not going to be happy moving forward through your career, because you're going to be doing things that don't feel exactly right to you. So I think that's one of the most important things that students and new professionals can remember is ultimately your personal brand's about you. So you have to be the focus of it. You have to build it around what you want and what you see yourself doing.
There unfortunately are some young pros, some interns who take it all the way up to the edge, especially in social media, when it comes to personal brand. They put some things out there that just don't feel right, they don't look right, and it really could impact them both now and in the future. So any thoughts on how some of the younger crowd can keep that at bay and just really watch what they put out there? Because we've had situations where it's been really awkward, but you have to address it with the interns and some of the new crowd, new generation.
My role, and I've told my younger sister and younger friends, if I wouldn't want my grandmother to see it, I'm not going to put it out there. Like, if I couldn't take this and show my grandma, and if I would get a lecture or a dirty look out of it, it doesn't belong anywhere anyone else can see it. So that's kind of where I stick with it. If I wouldn't want to show it to someone I care about, there's no need for it to be out there.
And private doesn't mean private. Private does not mean private. You have to be mindful of the things that you post, because we, as the people who hire people, we go look, we find it. So, because again, it's about brand and reputation management. And so your hiring of certain individuals is a part of your brand.
Well, I'd like to say just a couple of things here. It is absolutely, and again, we can use a lot of different words for it, but what we're talking about is integrity. It's talking about what you said earlier, being able to look yourself in the mirror when you go to bed. It's how you conduct yourself, and it's not situation specific. It's how you are in the world. But the other thing that I would like to just caution, particularly the young professionals in the room, to your point, you don't want to do anything that doesn't feel good. I think that's really important to pay attention to your internal compass. And I'll give you an example in my own career. I worked for 25 years in Boston, mostly as an internal person. But for 2 years I worked for a very large PR firm. And this was during the period where there was the lid was blown off of the Catholic Church and the sex abuse scandal. And and which did so much damage to all of the good priests who tried to do what they do every day, taking care of their congregations. But nevertheless, the cardinal was a friend of the woman who ran the Boston office of this PR firm and wanted us to offer our services. Now, I said no. I wasn't going to be part of that team. Now, I knew that there was significant career risk to me in that. You don't want to say no, but I had very strong feelings about that, and so I didn't get pressed to work in that way. That is a very rare thing in your career. I hope in your career it'll be a very rare thing that you're ever going to have to draw a line in the sand. But there will be times I don't care who you are in this room, where you're going to be asked to do something, or that you're going to give your counsel really thoughtful, logical, obvious counsel, and the person that you're giving it to, the senior leader of that organization, may say thank you very much and not follow it. That will happen to you. That will happen to you more than once. Now, that's not the day that you draw the line in the sand and you say, I'm not going to do this anymore. That's the day that you say, I get paid to provide my best thinking. I don't get paid more if they take it. And then you regroup. And then if that happens on such a regular basis that it is problematic for you, then you decide to do something else. But I wouldn't say, you know, I would never be rash. This is not a profession for people who are rash. We have to be really thoughtful. That's sort of the capital letter that I would say for people who are public relations practitioners. You must be thoughtful.
That moment you said no, Patti, I'm sure that was a defining moment in your career.
It absolutely was.
Any questions?
If I could add to the social media question that all of you touched on, but I liked what Robyn said. If you don't want your grandmother to see it, don't put it on social media. My rule of thumb, I was in a sorority in college, and we had a rule that you're always wearing your letters, and I have transitioned that into my professional life, and I feel like you're always representing the organization that you work for.
True.
Whether you're at work,
That's
whether you're
right.
at home on the couch, or whether you're out with your friends. And so if I say, would I want the partner at my firm to see what I'm doing? I'm not going to put that on social media. So that's a good rule of thumb, I think.
That's an excellent point. You're all, whether you want to be on or not, you're always on.
Yeah, so Taylor with Riggs Partners
Yeah, okay, that's a question.
mentioned that something Robyn said about if on social, if you don't want your grandma to see it, then don't put it out there. And Taylor echoed that and said she thinks her mindset is that she's representing her organization at all times, whether at home on the sofa as she's looking at tweets and posting some things, or whether it's sitting in the office. So that's a great point, Taylor. Bianca?
This is social related, but not really, and maybe it's just because I just came from the MSNBC recording, so it's political in nature. At what point, like, there are burning issues going on around the country, around the world, whether it's politics, whether it's injustice or whatever. As PR people, I always struggle, because I am an independent practitioner, is when do I speak out and how do I say it? Because am I supposed to be politically correct, or am I supposed to get people thinking? And that's something I've always struggled with, because personally I have my own values and thoughts and views, and sometimes I get on these things where I'm like, oh my God, I just posted that, let me delete it, because that was really like too forced. So how do you play that line when you are your brand, but some things you just need to, well, I shouldn't say need to say, but some things you feel are important to put out there and at least start a conversation, even if it's with someone, you know, just making them think about it. So how do you do that, especially in an election year?
Yeah, exactly, good point. I think for me, I have to quell a lot because I do work for a cabinet agency. And I'm the spokesperson for that agency. So in my mind, my thoughts are my beliefs. But when I go into work, that's what I'm there to do. So this is not going to be helpful for any of you. I'll go ahead and preface it with this. But anything that I have to say, I'll either go in my bathroom and say it, come out with a renewed spirit, or I share it with my husband and, you know, a trusted advisor or what have you. But to me, if you were to check any of my social media things now, you would not, I'm apolitical. And it's just because I do have a personal brand, and right now you're an independent practitioner, but that's not to say 3 years from now you won't be. You know what I mean? So in my mind, I stay away from a lot of those things. I mean, I feel like celebrities and sport athletes, they comment all the time, somewhat more so because they can. I stay out of that just because of the nature of what I'm expected to do every day. So
We have a question back here.
Okay.
From Twitter. So this is Karen Potter from GHS in the Upstate. She asks, does the panel have any tips, advice on how mid-level practitioners can advance their careers, move jobs, stay put, education, etc.? So could you restate that and then?
So Karen Potter, thank you for your question. Karen is with Greenville Health Systems in Greenville. So her question is, how does a mid-level practitioner grow and adjust in order to move into a really great space for the future?
For me, mentors, finding the right mentors, networking, relationship building, and then as Robyn so eloquently pointed out, knowing when it's time to move on. Sometimes you have to just know that it's time to move, and not for any other reason than personal growth.
That's right.
To touch kind of on the mentors, the New Professionals Executive Committee has been talking about this a lot recently because PRSA is relaunching their mentor match program. They're redoing it and changing it. And we're spending this whole month on our blog talking about mentorship and, you know, the different ins and outs of it. I think it's really important to remember that there isn't one mentor that's going to be with you throughout your career. You may have some that go all throughout your career with you, but there's not one that's going to be your answer for everything and that's going to help you with everything. You need many mentors. You need many people in your life to be a sounding board and to be that kind of guide, because you need the different experience and the different viewpoints that you can only get from multiple people. One person is not going to do that for you.
Excellent point, Robyn. Anybody else have any thoughts?
Kind of going off of what you just said, I think that comes back to, like, you can learn something from everybody. It doesn't matter how old or what their experiences, what their backgrounds are. You can always just take something from somebody. What Pat said earlier.
I think it's important to remember it's not just taking. You have to be giving something back. Like you can take a lot from other people, but you have to be giving something back to them. Or else it's not a relationship if you're just taking. You have to give both ways, and there has to be some sort of value for everyone involved. And it doesn't matter what level you're at. Like, I talk with Taylor at Riggs all the time, and I'm slightly further in my career than she is, but we talk all the time, just like I go to Kelly for all kinds of questions that I have. So there's multiple levels. Like, I can be a mentor, but I can also be a mentee on both ends, no matter where I am in my career.
The other piece to Karen's question is, and this has been touched on before, is the relationships. It's picking up the phone and having conversations with people. You know, I think PR people in general are pretty generous in terms of wanting to help, or helping somebody think through what their questions are before you make a move. It's really good to have as much information as possible of what you want that next chapter to look like. So there's a lot of different opportunities within public relations. So I would encourage you as a mid-level practitioner, think about what you want to do, talk to as many people as possible, ask a lot of questions, and then winnow down, is that opportunity available where you are right now geographically? Is it important enough to you to move if you have to? I think that's a big question. Is your life circumstance enabling you to make that kind of a decision? So you just have to really be strategic in your own life as you think through what makes the most sense in your next chapter.
Wow, thank you very much, Patti, Adrienne, and Robyn. Let's give them a round of applause.